discount.
Yes. Whereas if for example, there was a parish council by-election that got called during the next 4 years, we would have the full costs on us, because it wouldn't be an election on the same day taking place. So
Which is why we need to have funds in place.
More than the 1200.
Thank you. The E.ON invoice 3533, which is not, I don't think, on your. Is it on the agenda? No, it's not on the agenda. The reason why it's not on the agenda is that E.ON will insist upon sending me a bill 3 days after the meeting, which means that it makes life very, very difficult when it comes to paying their bill. Now, of course, we are obliged to pay it, because if we don't pay it, they'll cut our electricity off in the toilet block, which is not going to be very helpful. So I'm going to suggest to the council, even though it's not on the agenda, that we should pay it. And they won't change their systems, and they're too bureaucratic for that. So with your permission, I will also pay the 3533 to E.ON for the toilet block, the electricity supply.
Is everybody happy with that?
Are you all happy with that?
Thank you.
There's also another item which comes up on this one, and only this time of the year, which is the August payments, which have to be made in August, even though we don't have a meeting in August. So I'm looking to you for advanced approval for the statutory payments only for August, which is a repeat of the July ones. Again, they're not submitted until August the 5th, but it means I can pay the out to Jason Mayo and Jubilee Sports and the Inland Revenue and so forth.
So do you want us to take then?
If I could take them separately, so we have the variable payments and the July payments as one agenda item, and the August ones on a separate one.
Okay. Can I have your the proposal then is that we accept the payment, the statutory payments for July and the statutory payments for the 5th of August in advance. Are you all happy with that, please? Yes, that's correct. Okay. And secondly, can I have your approval, please, for clerk's expenses, memorial stone cleaning and contested election fees?
And Richard Roberts, until we've actually got the funds sorted out.
Okay, and the Richard Roberts check as well. Okay. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Well done.
Okay, just there's a couple of things that covers most things. And there was one other thing on there which I just wanted to raise. It's not purely finance, but I do need your approval. Some years ago, the council purchased a laptop computer, which is now past its sell-by date completely. It's given up the ghost. We haven't used it for about 3 years. I use my own. This is my own computer, and I use that for council business at the moment because the other one became so unreliable. But it's got to the stage now where I see little point in us keeping it and writing it off and taking it off our asset register. And if you're happy to do that, I was proposing that we could give it to a charity because they can make some use of it because they rebuild the whole thing. And you know, it wouldn't be a viable cost for us to do that, but it might be for them.
Can I make a suggestion? You take the hard drive out and we destroy it?
Yeah, the hard drive will come out as a matter of course anyway, because it's got information on there, banking information and so on and so forth. So yeah, you're right, Warwick, that has to come out. So if it, with your approval, that you're happy for it to be written off effectively. At some point we may decide that council should have a dedicated laptop, but it's not been budgeted for in this year. It might be something we consider next year's budget when it comes around to the financial budget for the
What's your own view on that, Aaron? I mean, from what you just said, at the moment we're kind of reliant upon borrowing your own.
Well, basically what it is, as you probably know with Microsoft Windows, you can split it. So I've got it split as 2 users, my own and Brent Knoll Parish Council, and they're both backed up separately. So, for example, if something happened to me and I fell under the proverbial bus, you've got a USB stick or a separate hard drive which has got all the current data updated on it. So any new clerk taking over could put the USB stick in or the hard drive, and that would be completely updated. So you wouldn't be bereft of continuity.
No, you misunderstand me. It seems to me that you're doing us, a pretty sizable favour in letting us use your laptop, because you talk here about future replacement.
Yes.
Well, shouldn't we be talking about?
We should be. But I'm mindful of the fact that we have to be very careful as a council that we do budget for things. And since that was not in the budget, it seemed to be unreasonable to come to the council and say you should buy a new laptop.
How much would one cost, Warwick?
We're talking about
Well,
400?
it sounds about 300-400 quid.
300 or 400 quid, yeah.
Yeah.
To be honest with you,
Not
For
a
that
lot of them.
that-
There ain't a lot, you can get quite a good one for that sort of money.
Oh yeah, I mean the one I've got is really, really old now, it's 10 years old. you
Well,
know.
that one there.
No, this is a modern one, but the old council one is
Oh, I see
really
what you
old.
mean,
It's really old. 10 years old, it's got Windows 2007 on it.
What's the one
Can
we
we-
call Cairns? About 400 quid when it was 10.
Well,
Can we-
should we look into it anyway?
Can we
Have a look, see what-
investigate that? Can you have a look at it for us as well, Warwick? With your contacts and
Yeah.
experience?
To be fair, a fair point you make, David, although to be honest with you, in some ways, there is an advantage to me in having it on one laptop actually, because it means I'm going to keep
Only
swapping
one to
over.
carry.
Well, it's not only that, but I'm going to keep swapping over, because I use my own laptop quite a lot as well, so I'm going to keep swapping the laptops over all the time. So there is an advantage in having it all in one unit, but we can investigate the
I think
costs
so,
and see
yeah.
what.
Have a look yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
Perhaps Warwick.
Thank you for that anyway. Okay.
Thank you. Okay,
Sorry to...
matters of
labour that.
consideration. Yes, are we there
Yeah,
now?
we are there.
Okay. SID replacement and general speeding matters. Would members mind if I invite Richard to be part of this discussion, because he has been associated with it right from day one, and I'd like his input. David has expressed some options, I understand. I've had a look at Richard's email that he sent as regards his dealings with, or what are they called, GB Group was it, or SB Group, the suppliers. My own feeling, and I'll put this to the council, obviously it's for a debate, is that we have quite a large area to seek to monitor, for want of a better word, and Richard has got into the habit of moving our SID around the place. One of the criticisms probably that it was very difficult to draw the information down from the existing radar lux. This machine in particular that we've probably honed in on is called a Your Speed Is indicator. It's £1,400 and it includes a USB where we can download information onto a stick, which means for the first time that we can get data. It includes lithium batteries. There are 2 lithium batteries. We would need to buy ourselves some clamps. They're £95 each. We need 4. There is a solar panel facility so that when it was moved we could leave it there a little bit longer because the solar panels would help to recharge the batteries, but that's obviously up for discussion. I would propose, and I'd like Richard's input here, but we just, for the moment, we replace like with like, and for an approximate cost of £2,000, and we get on with it as we have done in the past, doing our best, but this time having available data. I know David had some thoughts what he would like to do, but Richard, could you add something, whether you are happy, whether you see that as being a sensible thing to do, appropriate, or how do you feel about it?
I'd keep my comments fairly concise really. I concur basically with what you're saying. It seems a sensible unit to take. It certainly replicates more or less what we have. For all intents and purposes it seems to be a good, reliable unit with a good backup service. On the battery side, it's probably likely that we could start with just using the battery because as part of the legal requirement of it being a temporary unit, we need to move it every week to 2 weeks anyway. And in that instance, it may well be that the battery lasts quite nicely, under most circumstances, in which case we don't need to do any further complications in adding a solar plug-in unit. So I think you summed it up very well, Colin, that I think initially that unit plus a battery only and the clamps will meet the purpose as well. And then if we need to review it again after we've got the thing in operation, then we can see whether we need to do anything else.
Would 4 clamps be sufficient?
We need 5 in total.
I'm not sure whether a clamp comes with the initial.
Yeah, a clamp comes with the initial.
So if we bought an
four
extra
add,
you'd have your 5.
we'll cover the ground.
Okay. Then we're looking at about £1,800 without VAT, which obviously
You can read that.
can't concern. Brian,
How, can I ask, how secure would it be from somebody who wanted to thieve it? It might happen. And also, how secure is it from purposeful damage?
Yeah. I asked those questions of Mac Owens, wasn't it? That was a chap's name.
yes, yes.
Those questions. He said, first of all, that on the damage element, they did seem to be very bulletproof. You can go as far as to say, we remember from our previous outline of the unit. It seemed to be I've looked at one very closely. It seemed to be well constructed, all aluminium casing, and certainly more or less liable to be damaged than the old unit. The old unit was secure, but only in a relatively crude way. If you remember, there was a battery box which the unit then mounted on, and the battery box was secured with a simple
Padlock.
digital
Yes.
digital padlock.
Yeah.
My guys told me that what they've got is significantly more than that. It's actually implicit within the unit. It locks itself and then it's turned with a key. So in many ways it sounds more secure because padlocks can just be actually rounded off if somebody took their mind to do it. Hopefully that would...
It was the purposeful damage that I'm talking about.
Well,
you know what people are.
damage, it's accidental damage I would be more concerned about. We all know what happened in Burton Row last night, don't we? And we had it outside our house only 6 months ago when a farm vehicle comes along, collecting all the hay with all the bits sticking out, it takes the cables down. Undoubtedly, or not undoubtedly, but most likely, that's what happened to our SID unit, previously. I think it was about May time last year, wasn't it? But I remember there was a lot of farm vehicles rattling up and down Brent Road and Burton Road, and it got swiped there, undoubtedly, because the unit was actually turning through about 120 degrees, which showed it had been hit, and it got fired something. So this unit looks more sturdy from that point of view, though perhaps we need to be mindful of not putting it in the location where we had the old one.
Is it possible that we could locate it in the area where these ladies, our visitors this evening, have also?
Well, what that is one of the locations is just after the breach, of course, by the new estate there, which is a marginal place to put it really, because few people speed there. But I know the residents in that area felt they wanted it there.
Yes.
They'd been part of the parish and they
Yes.
felt that it was appropriate to have it there. There aren't, unfortunately, any likely posts really down that narrow section that the lady was talking about. And the danger there is if you put it in any way obstructing the traffic, they'll get it clouted. And if it's, there's no footpath, so therefore if you put it somewhere that it's sticking out into a place where someone could walk, they could well walk into it. So that again is...
Forgive me, if we were successful in meeting the lady's request of having the 30-mile speed limit brought closer to the welcome to Brent Knoll sign, would the post of that 30-mile speed limit not be an ideal...
If it was placed in the right place, certainly.
If we could clamp onto there.
Yeah.
If it was in the spot.
Just on that, two things. One is, I think it's certainly worth us requesting the move. In terms of when, because there didn't used to be a speed limit there at all a number of years ago, and the 30 was introduced, and the one thing we'll have to persuade county of is that their regulations basically allow 30-mile-an-hour limits to go where there's a number of residences within that area.
Yeah.
The reason it stopped where it was is because there's a big gap between what used to be called Chill Park, the one that's got the horrible hole that Brian was talking about near it, and Greenways, which is up on the right-hand side. There's that 200 gap. And that was what made them stop where they stopped. So there's nothing wrong with us trying to get it, and I think we should push for it, but we're not guaranteed we're going to get it. And in terms of that also, what we'll need to do is make the case as to why it warrants, even though it's a big gap, having that extension happen. So it's something I think we can push for,
So
but I wouldn't want to
sit on it.
Well, that's one of the things, if we can find something to attach there, then we can do vehicle counts and we can show the sort of speeds. I mean, there is, on the S-bend, there's a couple of posts either side of that. We might be able to do it there using as an indicator rather than as a control thing, because I know East Brent have done that in a couple of places where they've stuck their SID up, they've turned the display off so it doesn't actually flash anything because you're not in the zone, but it does record all the traffic movements. It gives you that feeling of that you can then go to county and say, look at the volume of traffic, this is an issue.
Soon as the public's been allowed to speak.
Sorry?
It was only, seeing as the public's allowed to speak, it was only recently that the 30-mile-an-hour from East Brent to Brent Knoll was introduced along the road there. So, I mean, it was left out Station Road out to Ham Road, that was left out. So, I mean, if they allowed that, they should surely allow to go out to the other
Yes, Brian. Go on.
2 or 3 years ago, I remember bringing up this very subject about the arrangement of signs in that area, and there was no logic to them. And we were going to follow it up. I'm sure you sent to the county.
Is this the area that the ladies were
Where
talking
the
about?
ladies
Yeah,
were talking about.
Yeah, well,
If you go along there, there's no logic
okay,
to them.
okay.
But it really wants to be reviewed as well.
Thank you. Mike, do you want to add a few words to...
Not really. I can't speak with regards to this particular SID. The SID that we have got at Mark, we share with 2 other parish councils, which is a much bigger version. It's like £3,000, but with each contributing, it was only £1,000 each, which wasn't bad. So we share it and use it once every 3 months. But we do get the stats, and those stats I look at closely, because I keep stats for the speed watch at Mark and can look at the SID results, and it's quite interesting to see the comparisons of when we're out on a speed watch and when the SID is recording 24/7 to see the differences, and it's quite large.
Okay. Thank you. David, you did have an email with some points.
Yeah.
Do you want to...
Yeah, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Mike, can I ask you, with your time at Mark, because Mark, it seems to me, has got the best of both worlds. It's got a SID, or part share in a SID, but it's also got things that are a physical constraint on speeding. Because SIDs, it seemed to me,
Are you talking about signs?
No, I'm not. I'm actually talking about things like the one-way priority.
We've got a
near
chicane
post
at the end
office,
of the
you've got
college end of the...
Yeah, you've got one down there, but you've also got one not far from the post office.
Well, yes, that's true.
Yeah.
In Church Street.
Now, it seems to me that Brent Knoll has a unquestioned problem of speeding traffic, certainly along Brent Street, but as we've heard this evening in Ham Road as well. So the SID part of the solution is great at encouraging, but it doesn't actually force you to stop speeding, whereas speed humps and, did you call them chicanes?
Chicanes,
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, they most certainly do. Basin Bridge has used both SID and chicanes to great effect, and a lot of other villages do. So my question to you is, how did Mark go about getting its chicanes?
I think they were in long before the speed watch was set up, but we tried with the police and highways to get other measures put in down the causeway. We have horrendous speeding
Yes, you do. Yeah.
At night time, sort of 90 mile an hour is not uncommon. At 1 o'clock in the morning, that is, so it's not too dangerous, but nevertheless it does happen. So those chicanes would certainly have an effect then, even for the speed at that time. But we got nowhere in trying with the police and highways in recent years to put further chicanes in. In fact, we were told East Huntsville, as you probably be aware, that they had chicanes put in, and the feedback is that they weren't that successful. What was causing a problem to the local houses was the fact that cars were then racing to get past that chicane with oncoming traffic, so they weren't stopping, which was the intention of the chicane, was that you'd stop one side to allow the other traffic the right of way. And so you do gamble a bit, and we didn't succeed, unfortunately, getting it elsewhere.
I think it'd be interesting, David. I think you should get the history of what went on in Brent Knoll, and I think Richard will deliver it quite succinctly, because we've already tried it, and I think you need to be aware of what Richard did in the village some years ago, trying to get traffic calming.
I'll try and summarise. It was a little while back, and I was chairman at the time, and I think Bob, you were on.
Yeah. And I was on too with you.
And you were on as well, and I think Owen, you took over after, and that's significant. I'll tell you why. A scheme was thought to be a good idea in the most general sense, that we thought we would try to pilot something to see what could be done about excessive speed, particularly in Brent Street. I would say that probably we've got some natural chicanes now, and that has been very helpful. But at the time, particularly, we're talking 20 years ago, there's probably less cars there, so we felt that some form of physical traffic calming would be appropriate. Well, we went further than that. I did design with the council 2 schemes. One involved speed humps and one involved chicanes. One of the chicanes, I remember, was just before the school, coming down, where the sort of Tots place is now. We had a chicane there, and one further down. I thought that was a really key area to try to limit speed. And it meant then drawing up a scheme, presenting it in a preliminary form to Somerset Highways, for them to say this was appropriate in terms of what could be physically installed. And then we published those schemes in both a drawing and a model form in the post office to see what the villagers' reaction would be. Incidentally, and I'll make one point here, and this is a significant bit that Owen will be aware of. During that period, we got some information from the council as to what the likely cost would be to install either speed humps or a chicane. And we reserved that amount of money with the council. That's it, that was just before you joined. Yes. But you took over that amount of money, didn't you?
I did.
I'm trying to recall what it was. It was somewhere between 8 and 12,000.
It was a fairly substantial amount.
I think it could have been 12,000.
Yes, it was.
I would suggest
coincided with the wind farm.
It was spent on a wind farm
project. That's right. It was a very useful reserve because it then came in very handy for the wind farm. That's right. No, but in fact, we reserved that amount of money, but it was a significant amount of money. It would have had a fairly major impact on Precept. So, but we took that money. I would imagine now we're talking nearer 30,000 to do what I had in mind then. So, quite an expensive scheme, but we thought it worthwhile to investigate. So we put that to the village, and not just Peter, a large balloon went up basically. The general view was, not only on Nelly, are we going to fund anything that's going to cause the village to have these stop-start areas up and down Brent Street. So The council took that feedback and decided, well, that wasn't a very viable option if the villagers weren't going to accept it, and it was strongly not in favour. We decided just to reserve the money, and it did it. As I say, it came in very handy a few years later. But as a scheme, you're entirely free to put a scheme forward, draw one up, take it to Somerset Highways, ask them if it looks for approval, get it costed, and do what I did then. I wouldn't be too optimistic about the outcome.
One interesting thing I was going to raise is that if you go up towards Bristol and you go out through Clevedon and you drive through Easton and Gordano and places like that, there's a pub, and the local residents there have taken it upon themselves to build wooden planters and just stick them in the road and put 30-mile-an-hour signs on, and it forces the traffic to stop. They've actually physically put them in the road to slow the traffic down, because they have a similar problem that people use that on the way to the police control room, and a lot of the offenders that go through there are the police officers, either late for duty or whatever, going in at the main police headquarters. So that was something that was an idea.
And they also recalled the number of people that they've caught speeding.
Isn't this a questionable legality?
Totally
Totally illegal, isn't it?
I can tell you now that is fraught with all sorts of issues.
Absolutely.
I can just see now, I can see all the sort of implications of that. Fills me with horror, actually.
But it's people are trying to be proactive. Yeah, the thing is that I live at the other end of the village, and I'm surprised the speed of people, villagers of our village, they can attain before getting to the A38 junction, where they have to slow down and stop anyway. And I don't understand the rush of why people have to go over 30 miles an hour down Brent Street to get to the A38, because when we come out of our house in the mornings, we have to edge out, and the amount of times cars have swerved round or beeped, and they are going in excess of 30 miles an hour. And then David and us have similar issues. If I need to trim the grass, cut the hedge, or anything like that, I put my life in my own hands, because people thunder down that road, and they still have to stop at the end of the road. And I don't understand the importance of going over 30 miles an hour down Brent Street. I think Brent Street is bad, obviously, but I think we mustn't forget Burton Road.
Burton Road,
They absolutely zoom on there, because there's nothing to stop them. At least in some parts of Brent Street there are cars parked, so you have to slow down. That doesn't stop a lot of people.
I think the very valid points you make, though, Warwick, I quite understand. Thank you very much, Richard. I'm grateful for your input. I feel that we should be doing something, though, as a parish council. We can't just go backwards on the work we did and Richard helped us to do. I would really like to do something and show the village that we're doing something still about traffic calming. I would like to propose that we purchase a similar unit to that which we've got, with additional clamps, not necessarily with a solar facility. The total cost would be about £1,805. It would allow us to download our data and hopefully use it efficiently, and hopefully tie in with Mike's work that he does. Sorry, Bob, did you want to say?
Happy to second that, but was just going to say, I think the advantage to that is, as Brian has just said, we have obviously a problem in Brent Street, but it is a problem throughout the village. It's Station Road, it is Burton Road, it is Ham Road, and Hart Road to some extent as well. The advantage with these is we can move it around the village and try and tie for those. I know we've got limited sites that we've approved of so far, but again we can approach to get other sites put forward. I think the design of this one the way it looks, I think it's taller and thinner than the one we currently have, which part of the problem was it stuck out a long way either side. There's not a lot in it, but there's a little bit.
It's very similar size.
Yeah. But I think it would be worth going with. And in terms of the damage, we just need to make sure we've got it covered on insurance. So if it gets damaged this time, we claim on the insurance and we look at it. And it does mean if we find it works, there are other parishes. I think Barrow has actually got a couple of them that they use, so they have them in different places at the same time.
One of the things on the insurance, because I did actually raise a question with our insurer some time ago when we had the original damage unit, and they said one of the biggest criteria there is for paying out on these damages is that they're approved positioning by the county. In other words, I got the impression when I spoke to the guy that they had a lot of claims from people who put them somewhere different to what the county had approved. And if they're outside of that remit, they're not covered.
Yeah.
So as long as they're done in the right place, they're fine. They cover it.
Thank you.
I think we can confidently say all the sites that we used
Because we did it, didn't we, before?
In fact, we've got a lot more sites approved than we used. Some of them just aren't really viable because again people clatter into them or they bang their heads on them. So.
I've briefly said in the past seriously that I'd be quite happy to have a sleeping policeman outside my house, provided I got a reduction in my council tax. Because that they do stop, slow it down physically.
So
Of course, they're very unpopular.
I have one outside of our house.
So would I.
It would definitely slow people down before you enter the ATM.
It's just interesting to hear that from members, because when we were doing this the last time, one of the problems we had was wherever we ended up putting a chicane or a hump,
No, we don't want
people didn't want it there. And that's too close to my house. We had when rumble strips were put at the front of the page. Again, we had objections.
The rumble strips. There was one of the major objections as well was with the bus people. Remember this? Yeah.
Well, we haven't got any buses, so it's hardly David.
School buses.
Is there any issue about attaching a SID to a taxed and insured vehicle, like a lorry out on Brent Street or Burton Road? Because the vehicle is legally parked, yeah, it's not breaking the law, it's not on double yellows, it can be parked there, and it's an obstacle to traffic. It forces people to slow down. And then you can attach a SID to that and move it around.
I think that is a
You're not breaking the law parking a large lorry or a van
That's
out
true.
on any of the roads, because it's lawfully there, it's not breaking any laws. But it forces the traffic to slow down.
Okay. Notwithstanding those comments, which are very valid, I would like to propose, if I may, that we purchase a Your Speed Sign Is unit together with additional clamps, batteries, etc., so that we can continue our speed watch, our SID, our traffic monitoring activities. That's my proposal, and at least I think we're going to be doing something. Would somebody like to second that? Bob? Does anybody have an alternative proposal?
Could we merely add the caveat that, you know, this is not the end of our consideration of these concerns and how we might address it?
This is an ongoing issue.
Yeah.
Ongoing.
Yeah.
But at least we're continuing to do something, because if you apply for traffic calming measures, it could take months or years.
Yeah.
But so, and I'm glad that Richard's come along to explain the background. So it's not that easy. Yeah. Okay. And I think it's important. So, Cynthia.
Yes. Well, just a point. Well, you know where I live, and it's quite narrow, and there are now a lot more cars opposite me than there used to be. But and so there's a very narrow stretch of road where the cars can go through. Now, the other day, somebody hit my car because of that. They were coming, what they call is their right of way, but somebody else was coming that way first, and he wouldn't stop. This chap had to hit me to get out of the way. He didn't do too much damage, but he did nevertheless. Now, that is a narrowing. It isn't the width of the normal road. You've only got a small you know, an amount of road which you could use. Now really, there should be a sign there, they're narrowing, to slow down, because, you know, they have this business up. Because that is what it is, it's not. When there's people, you know, go outside.
Maybe you should put
And
double
that, of course,
yellows
is
down there.
obviously,
I think these are, hopefully we've
Yes.
opened
but
the
it's
book.
awful there, it
And-
is awful.
Well, maybe we should put double yellows down there, so stop people parking there to allow free
But I
flow of
haven't got
traffic.
anywhere else to park.
But the thing is that the whole road there is, there are cars nose to tail on one side of the road, and I've noticed driving in either direction that villagers will accelerate if they can see someone coming the other way.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting,
Yeah.
they accelerate through, whether it's their right of way or not.
Yeah, exactly.
And even for you know, Councillor Harper, even coming out of his house, it's on that side of the road where the cars go up and down, and he can't see them. So there's always
Well, they're all going too fast.
right. So the classic thing, they're all speeding, they're all going through. It's the same thing, isn't it?
It has got really bad, and the amount of people that stop me now, I mean, not just one or two, loads of people are saying about the traffic and how it's dangerous. It's quite frightening at times, even just across the road. So you see, we do have a real problem. I know we're going to have all these things, but we have a real problem.
What to do with climate?
I mean, I'm going to say, Chair, what Warwick said is right in the sense that when Mark did their works, that was around the same, they were talking about it at the same time we were, when Richard was chairman. They put them in also a place called Stratton-on-the-Fostered at the same time, and they actually found their accident rate went up in Stratton because of people playing chicken, thinking they could get through the chicane before the people came the other way, and it actually ended up causing more accidents than it did, and they ended up taking some of it out. But it is something, it's how you get around the mentality of
Well, it is actually, driving.
Okay, thank
Very
you.
aggressive.
We have a proposal on the table, it's been seconded. There are no counter proposals. Can I have your vote on whether we proceed to purchase this SID sign, please? Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I don't know how long this is going to take, Bob, but 9B, housing development in village, history and clarity. Is this a long one or a...
Hopefully not. I mean, all I was going to do, Chairman, was we had a number of emails that circulated over the last month asking quite a lot of questions about what had happened with the housing developments that we've got coming in the village at the moment and what the history was. And I thought the easiest thing was just to pick out a couple of emails, just highlight a couple of questions which were raised, and thought I'd try and answer those. And if there's any other queries that members have got, then we can deal with them in the council. The first issue that was raised was that the development at 2 Brent Street obviously has gone ahead. We're waiting to hear about Station Road. The decision hasn't been finally made on that one. But the concern was raised that in neither of the two cases, 2 Brent Street nor Station Road, is there any social housing dimension, which is what is needed. That's not accurate in the sense that where I think confusion has been caused is in both sites there are affordable houses. Now, there are various definitions of affordable housing. One of them is it's 80% of open market value, but there are other forms of affordable housing. There's social rent, which is part of the affordable housing. They've now widened it to include first-time buyer housing, which can be done. So there is affordable housing itself covers a whole remit of things. With the 2 schemes that have come forward in Brent Knoll, they were permitted under, as you know, the policy P4, which was based on the affordable housing survey that was carried out. So what the team at Sedgwell will be requesting or demanding from the developers is that the breakdown of the affordable housing replicates what the need was that was shown. So the vast majority on both of the 2 sites, although over the 2 sites, will be social rent maintained by a housing association. It then went on, I mean, if there's any other questions members have got, I'm happy to take them as we go, rather than leave anything unanswered, because otherwise people don't know and rumours start as to what's happening and what's not happening. I think it's caused some of the problems that we've had. The next question in that email went on to say that the most obvious location for new housing was Musk Farm, and this was lost because of the mishandling by the parish council. That's not right, in the sense that the parish council were not in negotiations with the owners of Musk Farm. That was dealt with by Sedgemoor District Council's housing team, and it then went on to say that Bob Filmer has now apologised for stating that the owners would not play ball. And that is absolutely true. I did apologise because I was contacted by the owner of Musk Farm who didn't like the phrase not playing ball because she said it wasn't a game, and I totally agree with her. It wasn't a game. It was a serious discussion. My understanding, and I think it is borne out by some of the other comments, is that Sedgemoor and the parish council were looking for sites that would develop affordable housing with some open market to subsidise the affordables. I understand that what Musk Farm were looking for was a small development along the front of Musk Farm which wouldn't have generated the number of properties that would have given the affordable housing. So there was a disconnect between the needs of the development, which needed a greater number, and what Musk Farm wanted to put on the table at that stage. That's when the negotiations broke down and the Musk Farm was withdrawn from the discussion and alternative sites were then looked at. So Musk Farm was always the ideal site we all wanted because we thought it killed two birds with one stone. It dealt with the issue of what's on Musk Farm at the moment, and it would have dealt with affordable housing. But it wasn't through want of trying that it failed. It was just the aims of the landowners and the aims of the housing team couldn't be matched up. A later email then questioned about the site at not at 2 Brent Street, but at Station Road, that is in the application, is in the name of the South West Housing Society. And so the question was asked, does that mean the proposed developer is that housing society? And yes, they are on that particular site. In effect, it's one of the first sites in the area that's being looked at on this basis. What tends to happen is you get a developer who does the development and then sells off at a discount what will then be the affordable housing to a housing association.
And is that what Coleman are doing?
That's what Coleman are doing.
Right, okay.
In terms of the other site, South West Housing have decided to they took it to their board and said, look, what about if we turn this around the other way? We'll develop out the whole site, and then we'll sell off some of the houses to open market, and that will then fund us.
Yeah.
Now the hope is, by them doing it that way, they may in fact end up with a higher proportion of affordables on that site than they have to do.
Mm-hmm.
They have to do the minimum of 40%, but we could end up with more than that if their figures stack up, and that will depend on what they can sell them for and how it'll move forward. But so that's the basis of that one.
And where does that one sit at the moment, Bob?
At present, my understanding is that all the planning issues have been dealt with. They are currently circulating the Section 106 legal agreement, and various people are having to sign off on it. Once that's all signed off, that then comes back to Sedgemoor, and at that point they can issue the planning certificate, because you can't issue the certificate until your 106s have been signed.
Which is likely to be in the next 3 or 4 weeks, as I understand.
It could be imminent. I mean, we've been told for a while that the paperwork is out there, but obviously it's got to go to all the parties, and their legal people have got to go through it and agree it. So that's the why there's the difference in those two. Then there was a question here about how we know the Station Road scheme is to be treated as a delegated matter. So basically what happened there was initially the planning application came from the parish council. We objected to it because we weren't happy with some of the design elements. We wanted confirmation from Highways that they were satisfied with the access, and we wanted the drainage board to confirm that they were happy that they sorted the drainage, because there's been two ongoing issues down there. One has been road flooding, which has been opposite the old manor. The other issue is that we've known for some time that there's a culvert that is under what used to be the old post office.
Oh, yeah.
That apparently has collapsed, and so theoretically the water from the Ream should flow out that way towards Middle Street, but doesn't. What they've now proposed is the drainage board have come to an agreement with the developers down there that they're going to rejig the whole water network down there and send the water in the opposite direction, because it's all managed anyway. So it won't go out towards Middle Street, it'll go back out towards Brent Broad. And so that was part of the issue, was waiting for them to make sure that they agreed that that actually worked, because residents were obviously concerned if it was just a suggestion of the developer, oh, we might be able to do this, without the drainage board saying, yeah, it'll work. So we objected on those grounds. It then came back to the parish council about a couple of months later saying these are the changed designs that they altered, and the fact that by then the highways and the drainage board had come back saying we're not objecting, we're happy with it. And at that point the parish council withdrew its objection. That then meant it could be a delegated matter, which is why it doesn't end up before committee at Sedgemoor. Other than that, there's one other comment was made here again about me. Clearly, if it's the latter, he must absent himself from that deliberation. That's at the committee, if it went to committee. But yet again, will rob the Brent Knoll residents of their district and county councillors speak for their views of the Brent Knoll parishioners. As I mentioned before, obviously I'm one of 2 district councillors who represent Brent Knoll. So if I'm unable to attend a meeting, and in that particular instance, then obviously Andrew Gilling is the other councillor who can do it. Also, there is the possibility, which members can do, members of the public can do anyway, is to talk to a neighbouring ward councillor, which was what happened in the John Denby situation with the first application of 2 Brent Street, where he commented on a planning application. So any planning application that comes to the planning committee anyway, when you're on the planning committee, you're there as part of the planning committee. You're not necessarily there in an ability to speak purely on behalf of your own parish. You're having to deal with it as the member of the committee. So there is no loss of representation. What it means is the representation may need to be done in a slightly different way. But residents can most certainly be represented at that committee, and it does happen on a number of occasions. Other than that, I'm happy to take any other questions. If there are any other questions that new members have, I just think it's useful to have them addressed in an open forum, because then you've got two-way conversations. So.
Bob, as the culprit for all of this, can I, as a newbie, ask just exactly what you were suggesting might be needed? You mentioned Andrew Gilling as being our other district council, and we've also heard that one of the reasons that we have the meetings on Wednesdays is because it then doesn't clash with other nearby parish councils, so that you and Andrew can... Now, I know that Andrew attended our meeting in May, but I'm given to understand that he hardly ever does come to this one. So therefore, in terms of, as it were, representing us, as indeed you do, he's not here to hear the discussions, the concerns about matters that we might feel that we need the support of a or our district councillor. It's one of the reasons I raised it.
I mean, certainly that is the case. I mean, it's the case that even any of us as district councillors can't be at all parish council meetings.
But you're always at East Brent, aren't you?
Not well. Again, I have to miss East Brent periodically because they clash at the moment with Breen. So I'm alternate there. It used to be when Brent Knoll met on the first Monday, which was a few years ago now, that would have been East Brent, Brent Knoll and Breen all on the same night. There are other issues, but I mean, in terms of attending, I mean, if you want the councillor to represent you at a meeting, that doesn't mean at the committee meeting at Sedgemoor, they don't necessarily have to have been at the meeting, as long as you brief them as to what it is your issues are. And that's the same thing that members of the public will do. They will contact councillors and ask them if they can do that. So I mean, there are opportunities other than purely what comes out of the meeting, and Owen would be in a position to write to any councillor if the council wanted you to ask them if they would act on our behalf based on the decisions that you've made at your meeting.
I think David makes a valid point. I can see what he's getting at. I mean, you know, if Andrew Gilling is charged with being our appointed district councillor, and you make the effort to go to other councils, he should be asked to attend ours as a matter of politeness more than anything. But to show himself twice in the 2 or 3 years is really not acceptable, Bob. And I can well understand David being a bit unhappy with that, and I would support him. and I think somebody should have a word with him to say, look, we need to see you. You know, they're not always charged meetings, fortunately, but he needs to attend.
Agree with you? He does receive he always receives the agenda. In fact, today he did ring me in fact, I should have offered that earlier on as his apology, because he gave his apologies earlier on.
I think, to be fair, it hasn't been long term that he's been necessarily receiving.
Well, I think what happened, I think, in fairness to everybody concerned, I mean, he used to get a copy of our agenda regularly, and then because I didn't feel as though he really wanted to attend very often, I descended to end the practice and didn't actually send it. So maybe it was partly my fault for not actually giving him a formal invite, so to speak, with an agenda. It's just that he hadn't come, so I thought, well, perhaps he's got other commitments on that particular night, so I didn't bother to pursue it. But yeah, I mean, he does get them now, that's the point, and that's the important thing.
Could you have a word with him?
I can certainly pass on your wish to see.
Yes, please.
Mm.
Does everybody accept it?
Yeah,
Agree with
that's
that?
absolutely right.
Okay. I mean, he is an elected officer after all. Okay. Is everybody happy with what Bob has, information Bob has outlined, which is very useful, Bob, thank you, and the correct forum to which it applies. Planning team operational guidelines, terms of reference.
Can I just give you the background to this? Obviously, we've always had terms of reference, although they haven't been updated for a year or two, for any groups that operate independently of the main parish council. So it seemed to me logical that recently I should have shown just a revised set of those guidelines, and really they need to be approved by the meeting. So, because obviously it's not a subcommittee, not formally a subcommittee, it's simply a group of people who have been elected to do a specific job. And so what I've done, to make their job easier and to make the rest of the parish council's job easier to understand what their remit is, so to speak, I've produced a set of responsibilities, terms of reference, etc. I know, David, you had a couple of queries on that, which hopefully I would have answered in my email overnight. Was that correct in my assumption of that?
You did answer them.
Yeah.
Well, you gave me an answer overnight,
Yes.
but it doesn't necessarily. I mean, as you just said now, the wording here is for discussion.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. So therefore that is your opportunity to discuss it.
Because in particular I raised questions about what appears to be a kind of debarring of members of the planning team making any approaches to any planning application.
To any planning application?
Yes.
What, even if I want to put a conservatory on my house or build a room over the
garage?
garage?
Forgive me, Colin.
Yeah.
Project applicants.
The wording, hang on, I'll read it to you. The planning group has no delegated powers to make approaches to any property owner, whether it is a new application or a previous one. This also applies to any matters relating to affordable housing for present or future. That kind of sounded, in its current wording, like a sort of a barrier, a ban. Now, the fact of the matter is that whether I'm a parish councillor or not, I have every right, once I see a planning notice on a telegraph pole, to say to the owner, would you mind awfully just showing me what it is that you're... Now, he has every right to say, no, go away. But surely in order for us to do our job properly, say on some occasions, it would make common sense for us to knock on the door and say, can we have a look at what you're suggesting here?
No, I don't accept that. I think that it would appear to be an intrusion on people's privacy, knocking on their door. I think the planning documents that we get online are perfectly capable of being looked at and understood. But I do think that if there was any sizable project, then yes, you may want to go and talk to the developer in more detail. But the likes of me wanting to put up garage or an extension to my house is.
But those aren't the sort of occasions, Colin, when we would look to...
But that's what you just said.
No,
Anybody who makes an application, you want to go and knock on their door.
No. This wording says that it is verboten across the board. All I'm saying is that not on every occasion by any means, but every so often a planning application will arise where it would just make a bit of normal common sense to go along and have a look before putting forward things here. Now, I don't know if you'd agree with me, because you're the leader of the planning group.
We only went once,
Yeah.
and we went to Westcroft Farm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And by seeing it, did it make it any easier? No.
No.
By talking to them, no. And I think you have to provide local knowledge, so they want to know, what has been there, and would that affect the view, would that affect what it looks like in that area, the traffic, the highways and everything. But to be impartial, I believe you look at it on paper and that you can actually see where that property is situated, whereas I would say at district level they don't have that local knowledge.
Yeah.
I think putting yourself in a situation where you could go and talk to the homeowner, that might give them false hope, or they may believe that you are going to go against them. And I think you've got to remain impartial. We're videoed.
Yeah.
You can. I've been reading about this, and you can have committees that are actually held separately from this meeting, but no decisions can be made. But what could happen then is for the three of us to actually come together and say, this is what we have found, or this is what has been noted, and share that with the group to open a discussion where there is more of an input and there's more information to share.
Sure.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would like to see.
Yeah.
And that's why you three have made up a strong planning committee that would look at these things, not going out being policemen and as you say, giving false hope, or maybe upsetting people that think, am I going to get this? Because it's quite a sensitive time.
Yeah.
But Brian and Bob wanted to say something.
So just briefly, years ago, before the onset of the internet effect, I, for instance, for 1 year was the receiver of all the plans, and we had them in a spare room at home. Everybody was notified by the BKN that if you wanted to look at the plans, please contact me on my number and make an appointment, go and look at them. And this happened quite a few times. And I mean, I wasn't a specialist in it at all. I was just the receiver of the plans. And people came along and looked at it. And to me, that seemed to be a very good system. I wonder why we...
Well, that used to happen when you studied there.
Why are we not
But
doing
I've
that?
also had a phone call today from a local resident that is thinking of putting planning permission in, and that where do they get the advice from? And I said you can have pre-application advice by approaching the district, county, and again that's impartial because it's not a local person saying, well, I like the idea or I don't like the idea. And I suppose you can have a conversation, but for the parish council to know its place, that we just add some information to help it, if it goes to the district, to go to the planning committee, to actually give local knowledge. And whether or not, as a committee, we felt that this should be supported, but it is only advice. It's like if we've objected to it, it can go to district level and they can say actually we'll accept it, and vice versa. They don't have to take on anything that we've said, but it's just another piece of information that joins the cogs in the system.
Right, understood.
Bob?
Yeah, I've got very little to add here, actually. She's spot on. I mean, the only danger is if you do approach an applicant, what about the neighbours and the neighbours of the neighbours? Where do you stop approaching? Because the applicant might be giving you all the good reasons why they want to tell you it's a good thing.
Right.
The neighbours might then think, well, hang on, you've been around there getting all the one side of it. I hate the thing, but you haven't come and spoken to me. And And if you swap that one, what about the one across the road? So it's just a bit of a danger once you start down that